400 missiles. Not a drill, not a symbolic gesture. 400 precision-guided weapons, the kind that reshape battlefields, saturate defenses, and signal unmistakable strategic intent. In modern warfare, that number isn't just inventory, it's a message. And then the leak. According to reporting tied to a Russia-linked dissemination channel, classified details connected to US planning may have surfaced outside secure systems. In an era already shaken by recent US intelligence document leaks, the implications are immediate and serious. How does something like this happen? Historically, there are two primary pathways: insider compromise or cyber exfiltration. The Pentagon has faced both. From digital breaches to individual clearance holders walking sensitive material out of secure environments, operational secrecy has proven fragile. Even allies aren't immune. Germany's Taurus missile discussion leak earlier this year exposed how quickly sensitive military conversations can escape containment. And here's why this matters. In high-stakes military planning, surprise is a force multiplier. It shapes timing, targeting patterns, force posture, escalation control. If adversaries gain insight into launch sequencing, deployment corridors, or strike timing, the number 400 becomes less overwhelming. Because power isn't just about how many missiles you fire, it's about who knows they're coming. So what exactly was exposed? Reports suggest the leak wasn't just a headline number. It potentially included targeting data, specific aim points, launch windows, the timing framework of a strike, sequencing which assets move first and which follow, and critically, ISR paths, the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance routes that map how the battlefield is observed before a missile ever leaves its launcher. That distinction matters. Tactical intelligence focuses on immediate battlefield execution, coordinates, flight paths, terminal guidance. Operational intelligence sits one level higher. It reveals campaign design, force posture, escalation ladders, logistical rhythms. In strike planning, both layers interlock. If you expose one, you often illuminate the other. How does that happen? The mechanisms are familiar. Insider compromise, a cleared individual mishandling or intentionally leaking material. Cyber theft, state-sponsored intrusion siphoning data from secure networks, or redirection through third-party channels aligned with adversarial interests. Recent US group chat leaks exposing operational details proved that even informal communication platforms can become vulnerabilities. And here's the strategic danger. Even partial fragments, a launch window here, a reconnaissance corridor there, allow adversaries to reverse engineer assumptions. They can model expected strike axes, adjust air defenses, relocate assets. In modern warfare, you don't need the full blueprint. Sometimes, a few pieces are enough to see the pattern. If Tehran now understands even fragments of US strike logic, the battlefield changes before a single missile launches. Foreknowledge doesn't eliminate firepower, but it blunts its edge. If Iranian planners can anticipate strike patterns, they can adjust. Early warning systems can be placed on heightened alert during projected launch windows. High-value assets, air defense batteries, command nodes, missile launchers can be dispersed instead of clustered. Decoys can multiply. Emission control, or MCON protocols, can shift radar and communication signatures, reducing detectability along expected ISR paths. Timing becomes the decisive variable. If Iran can estimate when a strike package is most likely to move, it can preemptively harden facilities, relocate mobile launchers, or even stage counteractions during those windows. In military modeling, even a few hours of predictive advantage can radically alter survivability. Then there's deterrence psychology. Iran operates within defined thresholds and red lines. But it also leverages asymmetric retaliation. Proxy networks like Hezbollah, the Houthis, and regional militias provide layered response options. With insight into US sequencing, these actors could coordinate interruptions, cyber disruptions, drone launches, maritime harassment, timed to complicate American execution. The more predictable the strike, the more contestable it becomes. And as predictive insight grows, surprise, once a force multiplier starts to erode. That shift doesn't just affect tactics, it reshapes deterrence itself. If Russia played a role in circulating this material, directly or through aligned channels, the question isn't just how, it's why. Start with the strategic backdrop. Moscow and Washington are locked in a prolonged contest for influence, not only in Eastern Europe, but across the Middle East. Undermining US operational credibility in that theater serves a broader objective: weaken American deterrence, complicate alliance coordination, and present Russia as a disruptive counterweight. Information operations are central to this playbook. Modern hybrid conflict isn't only about tanks and aircraft, it's about shaping perception, exploiting fractures, and amplifying uncertainty. Disseminating classified US planning, or appearing to, acts as a force multiplier. It signals capability. It tests vulnerabilities. It forces Washington onto the defensive. There's also signaling embedded in the act itself. If US operational security can be penetrated, allies may question intelligence sharing safeguards. Adversaries may grow bolder. Even the perception of compromise can degrade confidence. We've seen parallels in the Ukraine conflict, where information exposure, real or manipulated, has been used as both psychological leverage and tactical tool. For Moscow, the value isn't confined to the battlefield. It's about eroding trust, injecting friction, and expanding the competitive space without firing a shot. And in great power rivalry, that kind of leverage is rarely accidental. For Washington, the problem isn't just the leak, it's what to do next. The first priority is damage control. That means immediate assessment. What exactly was exposed, who accessed it, and how widely it circulated. From there, operational revision. Strike timelines may need adjustment. Target packages could be reshuffled. ISR routes altered. In some cases, entire sequencing frameworks may be scrapped to restore uncertainty. But restoring secrecy is harder than enforcing it. Diplomatically, the United States must reassure allies, particularly within the Five Eyes intelligence partnership. If classified planning can leak, trust becomes fragile. Intelligence sharing frameworks rely on confidence that sensitive material remains contained. Inside Washington, another tension emerges. Calls for stricter internal controls and compartmentalization may clash with political concerns about transparency or interagency coordination. Tightening access reduces exposure, but it can also slow decision-making. Operationally, planners face a calculus: reposition assets, introduce deception layers, possibly leak controlled misinformation to distort adversary analysis. Yet, overcorrection carries risk. Dramatic escalation in response to a leak could validate adversary narratives or trigger unintended reactions. Then, there's public messaging. How much do you acknowledge? Too little invites speculation. Too much signals vulnerability. In crises like this, restraint and resolve must coexist. Because the real challenge isn't just repairing secrecy, it's restoring strategic advantage without widening the conflict. What this episode ultimately reveals is uncomfortable. In high-end conflict, surprise, once a decisive variable, is becoming harder to preserve. Digital networks, insider threats, and cyber penetration have compressed the space between planning and exposure. The risks are layered. Escalation cycles accelerate when adversaries believe they see each other's intentions. Miscalculation becomes more likely when partial intelligence is mistaken for full clarity. Alliances strain if intelligence sharing frameworks fracture under suspicion. Even quiet doubts inside partnerships can erode collective deterrence. But there are lessons here. Operational security can no longer rely on perimeter defense alone. It requires dynamic compartmentalization, continuous vetting against insider risk, and hardened cyber architecture. More importantly, doctrine must assume compromise as a baseline condition, not an exception. Strategic resilience will depend on dispersion of assets, adaptive deception, and agile planning cycles that can pivot quickly if exposure occurs. Flexibility becomes the new shield. The future could bend in two directions, either toward negotiated equilibrium, where transparency stabilizes deterrence, or toward renewed kinetic confrontation shaped by predictive warfare. What's clear is this: the fault lines are visible now, and great powers survive not by avoiding disruption, but by adapting faster than their rivals.